What's up, people? It's another edition of the New Breed Podcast, the world's best quasi new metal adjacent podcast from two dudes who are really there. I'm one half of your hosting duo, Jay Horskow. With you, I have my partner in crime, the notorious TIM, Tim Anderson Jr. Tim, how is it going?
Great. Feeling
You are
great.
running around like a fucking madman to make it here on time. And joining us this week from the Daily Mosh, Nikki Ura. Nikki, thanks for joining.
Thank you for having me.
So, Nikki, I guess let's start with talking about. I guess we'll start with talking about the Daily Mosh, right, and fill some people in, and then we'll see where the conversation goes from there.
Of course. Yeah, I guess my kind of like short spiel of what the Daily Mosh was and kind of grew to be and where I kind of came into play. Started out as a blogspot, a blogger account. It used to be called Pedal to the Metalcore. So that was back in like 2008. I was started by the first guy who started it. I'm going to butcher his name, but it was the combination of Animosity and Ryan. So Ryan, I always want to say Ryan Animosity, but I suppose the correct pronunciation would be Ryan Animosity.
Yep.
I don't know. So he started it in 2008, eventually changed to the Daily Mosh. I probably got evolved around 2011, where it kind of started going from a blog spot to like a forum based because of all the DMCA and things of that nature. And then I eventually with a friend of mine, he's fucking sorry, MySpace ass names, as you can tell, Nikki Urine, Ryan Animosity, me and my friend Matt Reptar bought it in 2017. So
Okay.
that was purely a forum at that point. And then, just recently we closed the doors on it as it was pretty dead. And that's kind of where we are now.
What do you think killed it? Is it streaming?
I think streaming has a big hand in it. I mean, the Daily Mosh has always had a really close knit community, and they've also the community's gotten older without getting new blood in it,
Gotcha.
which is one of those things. Most kids that started on the forums are now in their 30s, 40s. They have kids. Some of them are moved to China. Some of them are doing their like dream jobs in MMA and all these other things, and it's really cool to kind of see how they all fared in life and where they went, but it's definitely makes it for less time to incorporate a forum. Streaming definitely, I think, probably played a role in not really getting new people in the door. A lot of these like blog spots and things like that, I think, music discovery was just as big as kind of like sharing music as
Mm-hmm.
far as like downloads. And I think with that, no new people, you get a lot less music discovery and a lot less traction as far as like new people coming in the door, or even Google results and SEO and things of that nature. You could probably go on a whole rant on how that impacts discoverability and visibility for new people signing up.
Yeah, it's super interesting, man, because I remember the first time I ever found like one of them sites, I was like, dude, this is like fucking heaven right here.
Right. It was the greatest fucking thing in the world. You found a blog spot that's doing metal and hardcore and shit, and then it was sometimes you got stuff early, right? Like that was the coolest part was, my God, this album doesn't come out for another 2 weeks, and I've got a copy. And I mean, you say to some, I mean, I can't. How do I make the analogy with a normie, right? Because somebody getting a Taylor Swift album 2 weeks early would like be like Congress would be investigating that. You'd have the FBI, the DOJ, your ass would be fucking nuts. But like for like a normie music fan who's really not into music like most of us in the extreme side are, oh look, the new Kanye's out. It's 2 weeks early. Whereas we're like, yo, Black Dahlia Murder really leaked. Like it was the greatest thing in the world. It was the greatest thing in the world. You text people like, yo, tell me if you find a copy of this because
Yeah.
I'm looking for it. It was wonderful.
Yeah, the greatest thing about it is when I started Ill Street News, it was like I would go on blog spots and be like, all right, I know I'm interviewing such and such from this band. Don't want to tell him his album leaked, but I do have the song that I can play at the end of the episode because the episode is not coming out till it releases. So
Mm-hmm.
it like, dude, it was fucking perfect, man. And I used the Daily Mosh for most of that stuff because you guys were killing it, man. I remember going on there, and I'm guilty of it when streaming came, and like I really didn't need it as much. I kind of fell off from it. So I can admit that. But for when it was around and in its heyday, man, that shit was amazing, dude.
Yeah, so you could probably help answer the question of where people went as far as the
Yeah.
Daily Mush. It's just
That's yeah, but I
natural.
wanted to ask too to see if it
Yeah.
was pretty much the basis of it or consensus
I,
of it. I mean,
I think we can actually place a lot of the blame at Facebook's feet. And here's why. Here's my logic, right? It used to be that I would go on to Lambgoat and I'd have people to talk about music with. And then I could go on to some Philly sports forum. Tim, I forget the one that the Birds fans all were congregating against, right? And you could talk Philly sports, or you could go to PA Hardcore, or you could like your interests, your online interests, and your friends were segmented, almost balkanized, right? And then Facebook dumped all this shit in a blender. Lunatic Zuckerberg and his quest to rule them all. And I'm connected to people where I'm like, how are we friends? Oh, that's like, Roof Jumper 69420 from Lambgoat. That's who that is, right? And because of that, Facebook attempting to centralize all of your likes and your interests and all those things, we actually lost something, right? You lost something. And now, funny enough, the world is going back to that split up. Hey, I just go here to talk about music. I go here to talk about sports. I go here to talk about politics, and none of the three should ever meet.
yeah, absolutely. But I see where you're coming from, Jay, with that because I feel like the internet pretty much ruined everything. That's great, to tell you the truth.
Well, but to Nikki's point, right? So let's talk about the blog days, right? The You Send It days, right? I remember when You Send It was the greatest thing in the world because you could just literally go to You Send It and start searching albums, and there would be a decent, either pirated copies or legit copies, but there'd be a bunch out there. And Mega Upload, right? Like so the running joke we talked about it on the show, Nikki, is like the whole Bridge 9 board versus Lambgoat. I was the Lambgoat guy, right? And literally it was just every other post was YSI link, YSI link, YSI link, and it was all just fucking music, and it was great. It was great.
What was the one host that you could download off of super fast? It was like Donkey Share or like
there were a couple where they're like your first like 3 or 4 were at like warp speed, and then they like slowed it down to you'd be better off re-recording the album yourself.
no, this one was like every single one was instant. I just forget what it was called. It was something share.
I don't remember.
I'm gonna look through my links while we're talking.
Zippy Share was very popular for a long time. They recently shut down. I mean, you could even see those, share sites if you want to like track history. They've all, Mega Upload got seized at one point and then they're back now. Zippy Share recently closed down. I mean, even now it's like those sites that you used to even just use to host files are almost extinct at this point.
It was Zippy. You're right. It was like orange and white, right?
Yep. Yeah. Well, now because everybody uses Dropbox or Google Docs, or I can throw it in Drive and send Nikki a link and it'll work. Tim and I have also talked about like the Pirate Bay is unkillable, right? So you could still use that, but I truly miss like I was the biggest Oink fan. The biggest Oink fan. So for those of you that don't know, or if I'm dating myself here, Oink was a torrent site and it was specifically music. It was specifically music, not just extreme music. It was everything. And they had anything and everything you could possibly fucking imagine. Say you want a copy of some John Coltrane live album where he's so high he falls over in the middle of it, but you need a FLAC file or an AAC. They had it. They had it. They had like 16,000 copies of the same album in every format imaginable. And when that went down, I almost cried. Right? And that was pure, like people like us, pure music fans, where we're not in it because we want to get, scene cred because we leaked something. It's like, I have this obscure album and I have it on vinyl and I just ripped it with my turntable to a lossless. It's like 900 gigs of joy.
I was the same way when RARBG went down. I literally almost had tears. That was like the greatest torrent site of all time.
And Demonoid.
Yeah.
I got Demonoid. You know how many comic book files I have on a hard drive from Demonoid? Like the entire X-Men run for like 30 years, like all of GI. Like it was great. It was great. And I think what some people miss, especially like so before you joined, Tim and Nick and I were talking about like when you talk to like the Zoomers and the younger fans, like, what do you mean you had to go download something to rip it onto your iPod and then carry it around? Like there's something to be missed there because I don't think I'm going to use the term normie. I don't know what other you use, but people who are not into as music like we are, they don't understand we're not sharing these things because we're trying to get free music. It's truly because we really do love what we're into. And I found this awesome band that you probably never heard of. Well, I'm going to send it to you because I want you to check it out. And how many bands have grown just like that, just organic,
Oh, absolutely, dude.
right?
That
Like look at
that
some of the biggest bands in the scene. I mean, aside from touring, your only other option is just grow organically.
Well, that I'm glad that you said that because it kind of goes into what I was going to ask next. It's like how many instances have you had where like bands have reached out to the Daily Mosh like, "Yo, man, what the fuck?" Or have you found were you finding trouble with labels as well, like messaging you or getting hold of you guys?
So I mean, we've actually so I mean, I also ran not just the Daily Mosh, but I like Do Better Dead, which was like a kind of smaller subset. I mainly did graphics for a lot of these places, but I like Do Better Dead. We um we had a band of the month poll. And this was God, shaky on Miss May I because I don't know their discography very well. But it was one of their albums came out and they won the band of the month poll, and they actually posted it on their Facebook page linking to our blog spot, like saying like, hey, we won band of the month for these guys, and they knew what we would do. They knew we were posting downloads to the album that they were trying to promote. So I mean, a lot of the time we would get a lot of positive feedback.
Oh, wow.
And a lot of people like saying, "Hey, I'm in a small band. Can you post this on the site and try to get some eyes on it?" One of I don't know if I'm probably going to say a bunch of band names that aren't really that recognizable, but one in Europe, Forgetting the Memories. One of their lead singer was a really good friend of mine. He actually sent me like their first album, but they went on to do like 4 or 5 albums, and they toured with the Devil Wears Prada when they were in Europe, I think, for a little bit too. Like just mind blowing things of people you meet, and kind of bands that were actually like kind of like into it. Uh, Record labels probably were a little bit more uh, temperamental. Trying to think of the. Sorry, I'm really bad with specifics. So,
No, that's all right.
uh, hardcore record label. The Beautiful Things was on them for a while. I used to pre-order albums from them, and they found out that I was the guy from the Daily Mosh, and they would cancel my orders, so I couldn't buy records from them anymore.
Was
Are
it
you
J
kidding
Tree?
me?
No, it was like I think it was like 1-8 something. Beautiful. I think it's the Beautiful Ones.
Oh yeah, yeah, the beautiful ones. Why did I think they were on J Tree?
I think it was
I think
specifically Jaded Love that I was trying to buy, 2015.
That's a great record too.
6131 Records. That's
Oh
it.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So they actively found out who I was. Because like every once in a while they would send out, I was a big vinyl collector. I
Mhm.
recently had to kind of hold back, but you would get like the little MP3 downloads, and some of them wouldn't be time gated for the release date. So you'd get the vinyl like a week early. And then you just take the MP3 download and just throw it up on the site somewhere. Uh, and they found that I was the one doing that. So they kind of like blacklisted me from buying it. And at that point, I was like, well, I could buy it from you, or I could just buy it from a third party. It's kind of up to you. Like,
Yeah,
I'll
it's still gonna
still,
wind up there.
yeah.
Kind of silly, right? It's kind of silly.
Yeah. So, I mean, labels, we probably got a little bit more pushback. Bands, the only bands that really kind of were like bigger ones, and it's hard for me to say with metal and hardcore and pop punk bands. A lot of them didn't really care. It was when you had like a popular rock band that kind of like skirted that line between, like independent and like, huge label.
A chode rock band on their way up.
Yeah,
Okay.
like Bring Me the Horizon may have an issue with us posting their album versus, some small independent band, or even, Devil Wears Prada never really had any issues with it. Things like that, Rise Records never really had too many issues. They would take the links down, but they never really reached out or slapped the hand too hard in a lot of those cases.
How are you guys usually getting like stuff 3 weeks out? Because I mean, there's times I went on and I was like, holy shit, this doesn't come out for like a month and a half. I mean, where were you guys getting? I mean, I don't know if you want to say because it might. I don't know if it's incriminating, but
Yeah, no, I mean a lot of I mean this is all I mainly did graphics, so
okay,
a lot of the people that were doing the actual
Right.
possibly incriminating things weren't me. But a
okay.
lot of it was like they were reviewers for
Mm,
a website, a magazine, whatever. I think there was a period in time where even independent labels, there's not as many of them as there used to be. Um,
Mm.
but there was a time where there was so many independent labels and music was kind of booming in a discovery sense, kind of before streaming became super dominant. Uh, and I want to say they were just trying to get coverage on anybody. So you didn't really have to have very, you know, high press credentials
Gotcha.
to kind of get your foot in the door. And, I even reviewed a few albums back in the day. Um, just because I had people knew who I was. So I was like, oh yeah, I would love to review an album. They're like, oh, okay, here, write up, like a 30 paragraph thing on this new Code Orange Kids album. Here you go. And I'm like, oh, okay, sure. But then I would have the album like, a week earlier and you would be on like Last FM looking at, people's Scrabble history and be like, how do they have that album? That album doesn't come out for a few weeks. And then you'd be like, hey, you get a direct message and be like, hey, can I have that album you're listening to? I won't share it with anybody. And eventually you share, it's the you tell somebody and then someone tells their friends and
Yep.
then
Yep.
eventually it would get out. And that's the majority of the time that's how I feel like most of the releases got out. But there were some that were like, I know, like historically, that were like months early and things of that nature that were just those, I assume, had to be like kind of internal leaks
Yeah.
yeah,
in some of those
yeah.
cases.
Yeah, because I remember a while ago Jay had a story about like some guy used to be in a pressing plant and he would like
Yeah.
leak like Christina Aguilera or some shit like a month in advance and it like caused a total shitstorm or something.
Yeah, the book was How Music Got Free, and it was literally the Wares Group, for lack of a better term, that was leaking stuff from a plant in Ohio. And I mean, they did it for money. Like the guy was like, he even talked about it. He was like, I was completely ridiculous. I had a ginormous Cadillac, and they came up with all these different schemes to sneak CDs out, and they would have like 10 people working with them to sneak CDs out because if six got caught, four didn't. And kind of really, I mean, really fascinating that was the weak link, like the pressing plant. But I think we've talked about this, Tim, under separate cover, right? The idea of when your album is done, why does it take 6 fucking months to put it out? Like as a fan,
Yeah.
if I know the new Black Dahlia Murder album is done, yo, I don't want to fucking wait. Just put it out. You could do vinyl pre-orders, right? And tell everybody they're not going to be around for another 4 or 5 months because they got to go to the plant. Fans are okay with that. But it's the frustration that an album is done and you're waiting on it. Like
Well, like the new Dying Fetus was done in February. It came out in fucking what, September last year?
yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah,
Yep. Or like
it's
we know the Nails album has been done, the Throne album has been done, Black Dahlia Murder is done. It's coming out in September. Like they'll put the shit out.
well,
Eh,
I think what that is labels like to wait until they can get touring going to promote the records and all that kind of
eh.
shit. So I understand it, but yeah, the 3 4 month wait thing is crazy.
Like when I see a band who hasn't put an album out, and I know they've been out of the studio for a while, and maybe they've released a single. When I see that, Nicki is booking a national tour as a headliner, I know that the album is going to be coming out right before that. You know that. They don't do a warm-up national and then a headline national with a new album. You know that, oh, okay, the album is coming. So
Yeah.
you can start judging by when people are lining up tours that they've got something coming. They got something cooking.
Or unless you're like the band that tours for the same album for fucking 10 years.
Yo, not no offense, but Magnitude literally toured off the same album for 4 years.
Hey,
I
if it works.
I love Loathe. Love Loathe. Saw the full album tour, was completely sold out. Album was great. They just did the Knock Loose run. It's all the same old songs. It's like, yo, get that thing out. I know it's done. I know you're out of the studio. Just get it the fuck out. I honestly, I think if we're gonna go down this rabbit hole, I think the band that does it best is Soft Kill. Their album has a Friday release date. They will release it on Bandcamp to anybody who's ever bought something before on a Tuesday. they're always just dropping shit like, hey, the album's done, it's out in 2 weeks. Here we go. Like
I
why would you wait?
appreciate it.
Right? You
Yeah.
spent all that time building your art. Why would you just sit on it? Like, yeah, you guys are gonna love it. And you're right, it's probably the label dicking around and we need to put up a press. You don't need fucking press anything. But the other thing I was thinking about was I was listening to a podcast where they were talking about some artist just got something like 1 million streams, but he's not on any Spotify playlist. And back to what, like, it's a major accomplishment. Like, this guy, he's a hip hop guy, has 1 million streams, but he is not featured on a Spotify playlist, which is how most people get their notice and get their numbers up. And that's one of the things that I think, to your point, Nikki, you didn't say it explicitly, but when these blog sites and when these forums go away, right? I mean, if you're not getting on a Spotify playlist with the amount of the volume of pure, honestly, it's a lot of shit out there too. For all the bands really churning good stuff out, it's almost overwhelming. That was how we found stuff, right? It was the message board, the blog spot, the Lamb Goat. That's how we found things.
Did you guys have like counters on there of like downloads? Like, I'm sure like links that go up, you guys had like numbers of how many times it's been downloaded.
Yeah,
What-
so
what-
I mean, certain sites like Zippy Share and stuff like that, depending on how you uploaded it, would give you that. Otherwise, the most we could probably see would be like if a link was hit through like SEO metrics.
Okay.
But with like how the file upload sites worked, I know Zippy Share had kind of like you could upload a file anonymously, so it wouldn't be linked to like an account.
Gotcha.
They would take those links down quicker, so they would have like an expiration period. I think it'd be like, usually I think it's like if in 7 days someone doesn't hit the link, they take it off their servers.
Yeah, I think it like times out. Yeah.
Those we wouldn't be able to kind of like track in that regard, but like other ones that were like linked to an account. Oh my god, I just remembered MediaShare or MediaFire.
Yes, that was another one. Yes.
Yeah.
That
That
was
one,
great.
like you had an account and you had like your list of like all the stuff, and you could see what was like kind of like the most popular and what wasn't. But yeah, like anonymity became a lot more important, kind of like in the later years, around like, I'd probably even say around like 2012, 2014, like those type of years.
So what would happen? You would get like what is it called? DCMA or
A
something? What is that?
DMCA,
DMCA?
Digital Media Copyright Act. So when I worked at Comcast, I used to get those for my BitTorrent stuff, and I would post them in my cubicle. I would literally have like all the violation notices in my cube. My boss came up at one point. He's like, not a good look. Not a good look. I think it's funny, but not a good look. So let me ask you, Nikki, personally, what's an example of a band that you found through like a blog spot or through a forum where you were like, I never would have found this without these guys, but this is fucking great.
Oh God. I mean, so many bands. It's hard to kind of like think so far back. But even I'm trying to think of like, so I'm kind of cheating. I have my Last FM up, trying to kind of look
That's all good.
at like bands that I kind of like feel were a little like underrated. Trying to look at like the last like year to try to get an idea of like, I mean, I came from like, so I mean, obviously, Nikki, you're an X. X's are there for straight edge hardcore, which back in the day, there was a boom, probably like in my high school years. And Seventh Dagger was a big label.
Mm-hmm. AFB, Cherem, all that stuff. Yep.
Yeah. So like all those guys, I was like, I was looking for the new Seventh Dagger. I had like the family crest they had like a design of on their shirts and stuff. So like I remember being like super into anything that came out from there, like Recon. God, there's so many. I think one of the last ones maybe was like Dead Man's Chest was on there for a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
That one guy that became a really big TikToker, Ghost Ship, Ghost Ship X.
I remember that. Okay. Yep. Yeah, that was like the 2003, 4, right? Yeah. Like where all of a sudden out of nowhere, Straight Edge had this moment where everybody was wearing X's, and yeah, Tim, we talked about this Aftermath of a Train Wreck, Cherem, all that stuff that came out of the Vegas side. Oh man, Seven Dagger, man, you're bringing back memories. Armed for Battle, Chicago
Yep.
Typewriter, Lynch Thy Beauty. I mean, oh my god, there was
Bro
so many.
Killer.
Yep, yep,
Well, that was most of that was Salt Lake stuff.
yeah,
I mean, yeah,
yeah. I mean,
same fucking
yeah, kind of, yeah.
area
As
though.
we insult that part of the country, but yeah, you guys are all kind of the same. Vegas, Salt Lake, whatever. Add some Mormons, add some casinos. They're all kind of the same thing.
Where are you from, Nikki?
Oh, yeah, I'm from Chicago,
Oh, okay,
so
cool. Well, that's a bit.
Midwest.
That's a huge hardcore scene over there.
Oh yeah, yeah. No, I was very lucky to. I mean, I grew up in high school when Adam Warren was in Bloody December, which was his like local band, and he ended up
mhm.
going on to Oceano, obviously.
Oh,
So
okay.
like, like I was like hanging out with Bloody December. Was it Bloody December? I think it was Bloody December. But I ended up hanging out with those guys a lot in that scene. So it's like one of those things where it's like, oh yeah, your friend of a friend is dating, Adam Warren. And it's just kind of weird seeing him now, being like such a still prominent
Mhm.
guy in the scene and still releasing music, which is, great for
How,
him. Good for him.
how old are you?
I am 34.
Oh, okay, okay. I don't know why I swore I see on your Twitter you were like 24, and I was like, damn, this dude's
Oh,
young to be doing the blog thing.
I wish. I wish I was still 24.
Yeah, right. Shit, I feel like I'm 54.
I am 54, so eat a dick, Tim. But I mean, and it's kind of interesting. So now that I think about it, we had, the blog spots begat the torrent sites, which begat, I mean, MySpace was in there at some point. Everybody was getting shit off MySpace. I mean, my God, you know how many demos I bought off shady bands off MySpace where you PayPal money and you kind of sort of prayed and hoped that maybe in a month you'd get some crappy CDR with like someone scroll across the top. Like, what is this? Did I even order this? Yeah.
See, I never did that.
Really?
I would just go on SoulSeek.
See, I'll be honest with you. I did not know how to use BitTorrent until I got a job in IT. And I
Mm.
was an IT guy. One of the developers sitting next to me said, "Dude, you don't use BitTorrent?" And I said, "No." And he said, "What are you, fucking moron?" I said, I've never had anybody explain it to me. Right. And so he sat down and explained how it worked my entire, like, record scratch. It was at that moment that everything changed. Right. Because now it's like, whoa, oh, you can find fucking anything. Soulseek's still going.
Yep.
Still
Sure
going.
is.
I had that moment as well when I first learned how to torrent stuff. I was like, this is the greatest thing ever.
Like, what it's like almost like a BCAD type life, right? Where it's like, Jesus. Trying to think, what other questions do we have?
have you guys at any time got or have been threatened to get the site taken down at any time? Like, was there like a big like copyright thing going on, or because I always
Oh,
wondered how these sites got away with this stuff because it was always like a .com or like a .net. Because I see a lot of sites nowadays that get like violations. They'll go to like a .nz or a .ru because they're countries that just don't give a fuck about
Yeah, they
piracy.
can host it. Yeah.
It's
yeah.
kind of like when like RARBG has a Mira site. I don't know how safe it is, but it's like I was reading in a torrent forum, like people are like, yeah, like they just go over there. It costs a shitload more to host, but they can't take them down because the country's like, whatever, the fuck do we care?
Yeah. So, I mean, a lot of it, at least with like Blogger and stuff, Google makes it very easy to create a new account and
Oh.
also makes it very easy to back up all your stuff. So they allow you to export the like theme files. So like
Mm.
your HTML, stuff like that. So you
Okay.
can keep the look pretty easily. And then they also let you export your posts.
So
Oh.
So
you dump your badging, you dump all basically the CSS, you dump all your posts, and then you just recreate something you're basically restore from backup, and there it is.
yeah, back in the day, that's how it would be. I mean, the Daily Mosh went down maybe like 6, 7 times from DMCA, and a lot of the places, Blogger especially, had kind of like a strike policy. Although it kind of, I feel like it ramped up over time because there were times where it'd be like, we may have had like 50 strikes against us, and then we got shut down, and then other times it was like 3. And I think a lot of that also depended on the artist that was striking the posts, and how they kind of automated it a lot easier kind of as time went on. So I mean, like before, you'd have like an actual person going through looking at
Right.
pages and pages of stuff looking for like their representative or their album, or searching manually, and those took longer to process and longer to do. And then eventually it just became automated. We'd get like a takedown notice like within like an hour of it being up. It would be like, oh, okay, so that's like hide that post, that's gone. If people want it, that someone else is going to have to kind of accommodate that hole. But a lot of, like you're saying, the places that kind of had the most success, like the bigger ones, I would say Daily Mosh was probably a little bit more niche, and more of a collector's forum in a lot of ways. But like It Leaked was probably like a really big one.
Oh, yeah.
The most recent one was Kingdom Leaks, which I assume at this point is probably gonna be the last big one. And they hosted through like you're saying, countries that don't have very strict DMCA policies, and the ones that are still going like Alter Portal and stuff like that, those are in Russia. So like it's like the Wild West out there. So like,
seriously.
That I find that the Russian torrent sites are the best ones because you just hit translate on your browser and you just see whatever the fuck you want.
Yeah.
Them things are always there. I love that shit, man.
Might get some malware in there, but like, hey,
yeah, but it's like the old LimeWire days, right? Where sometimes you got the new Linkin Park song, and sometimes you got a virus that killed your parents' computer. I mean, it was a crapshoot. It literally was the Wild Wild West, literally.
Oh yeah, it's like you download the new Photoshop and your Windows thing goes off with 33 Trojans, and you're like, fuck it, I need this program.
Yeah, I mean, I have re-imaged my last Dell. I re-imaged that thing. When I finally killed it, it was after like a decade. I finally had to get rid of it because the RAM couldn't work. Like the chip had been too slow. It couldn't handle the modern internet. I had re-imaged and reinstalled XP on that so many times from all the janky shit I picked up using BitTorrent. Where I'm just like, oh fuck, I gotta Kim. Plex is going down for a day. I got to defrag the disk and then wipe everything and I literally had on a keychain. I had a USB drive that just said XP, and I would just plug it in and boot from disk, reinstall. That's where it was.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, it's funny. Like, you're naming all them sites because I used to have a folder in my bookmarks, and I would go on every week on like a Tuesday, Wednesday, and just literally click on everyone. What's new, and just download. Like I would just I have a hard drive here of like, it's like 4 terabytes of just music. So like, I don't use it anymore, but I always think back and I'm like, how much time I put into getting all this stuff? Like, I got to keep that thing.
Yeah, I've still got mine. I actually downloaded the file that lets you go in and edit the ID3 tags. So all my shit is tagged. And it's like, I've got my old iPod, but like, it's like, I used to buy everything through. Up until like 2 years ago, I would buy the shit through Bandcamp and then download it and put it on my hard drive. And now I'm like, what was I doing? Like, what was I doing? Like, I get it, but I mean, Bandcamp is kind of cool. You go in and click download library, and it would literally dump you a zip file with everything. But like, what was the efficiency that we've gained, right? Like, here we are lamenting the death of CDs, the death of the music store, the death of the blog spot. But it is kind of nice that I could be sitting at work and go, oh shit, the new such and such came out, and I completely forgot that came out. Bloop, Spotify, add to library, done. Okay, cool. I'll let's do it on the way home.
Yeah. I mean, the convenience factor is great, but there was just something about finding that record a week early where you're just like, you feel special. You're like, fuck yeah.
Yeah. Right? The Burn Night CDRs. Oh my God, I was going through sheaves of CDRs at work. They're like, why do you keep buying these things? I'm like, I don't know. They're corrupted. As I have a pile in a binder sitting on my desk.
Oh yeah, dude. That was like the best times ever, man. It's like you go on like your little message board and you're like, all right, who's got what? Who's got this? And that's what me and Adam used to do.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And then you end up with the circle of friends where it's like, yo, Nikki, did you get a copy of this? No, but I know somebody who did. Hold on, right? Like, most of and honestly, that's where the internet camaraderie came from. The Lambgoat friends, I actually still have some that I meet in real life. That it's like, oh, did you get a copy of that? Yeah, hold on, let me send that to you. Hold on, you want this too? I'll send you this. It's kind of cool.
Cool. It is. So since you're from Chicago, I want to get into Like, how's the scene out there nowadays? Like, what are some of the bigger bands coming out of Chicago nowadays? Because I know before, like, you had Victory over there and all that stuff, and Chicago
Right.
was always a big scene people would talk about. But nowadays, it's kind of like I don't really hear too much out of there, but I know it still is a big scene. Like, would that be true right now?
Well, age has not done me kindly as far as going to shows.
Yeah, yeah,
I
me too.
I've gone from being in the pit to being the guy that's like, "Where's the seat? Can I
Yeah,
see the band
Yeah,
from
where's the
here?"
seat? Yep, yep.
So being up to date on like what's going on, but I do think Victory dying was probably a big hit to the Chicago scene, especially when it comes to like hardcore and metal and kind of bands of that nature. Because Victory was like the record label. I remember like
yeah.
we would go visit the Victory offices and take like like the hardcore, one guy kneeling down, holding the other guy's hand in front of the Victory record sign at their offices and stuff like that. Like that was like a Wednesday evening for kids in in the area that were kind of like into it. But it's hard for me to have a huge finger on the pulse, just because of my age. I don't think I remember the last show I think I went to was maybe like Thursday, like 3 or 4 years ago, when they came back and did a tour.
I'm the
Um,
same way, dude. There has to be a really good tour band to get me out of the house these days. There's more
yeah,
bullshit to drive there and find a fucking spot. Fuck that, man.
yeah, 100%. Oh,
I'm
and the
glad.
prices. Oh man.
Yeah, I'm glad someone else feels the same way because Jay goes to like fucking 3 shows a week at this point.
I try not to do more than two a month because the wife complains. But yeah, you're not wrong. I mean, shit, I just saw, what was it, 2 weekends ago, I saw Slipknot. And the show was fucking great. It sounded like they did in '99. It was awesome. Knock Loose got a huge reaction, which was really cool. I think Orbit Culture was the opener. I
Yeah,
caught like a couple songs that they weren't bad, but it took me an hour to park. It took me an
yeah, that's
hour.
crazy, dude.
Hour to park. I had a whole cooler full of beer. I had chairs. I'm going to chill out and pregame. Nope. I I pounded one beer. I met a couple of friends in the parking lot. Pounded the beer and ran inside. Um, and I mean, look, did you see that Helmet just announced that they canceled their tour with Local H
Yeah,
due to poor ticket sales and poor pre-sales and all that? And it's like, I get it, but part of it is, you're to your point, where everybody's getting older. Not everybody goes to shows. Not everybody can afford to go to shows. And not for nothing, Ticketmaster sucks. To anytime you hit a Live Nation venue for a Ticketmaster show, you're paying at least 25, $30 in fees, and then you're paying $15 a beer.
yeah.
And
Well, good
what?
thing for Nikki is he don't drink, so he don't got to worry about that.
Yeah, this is true,
Yeah.
but for the rest of us, it kind of fucking blows, right? Well, no, he's got to pay $7 for a glass of tap water, right?
Which is
Right.
fucking
So
insane,
who's
dude.
getting more screwed there, right? Um, yeah, no, I get it. I completely get it. It's a different world, and it's a different world, and it's a different time.
I mean, the last show I went to was a year ago at Pantera. I haven't been to a show since.
Ah, old people. Old people got
It's
to get out
crazy,
more,
dude.
right? It keeps you young. Keeps you young.
So let me ask you this: do you think there will ever be a time that nostalgia hits and people go, "Let's do a blog site again"? For maybe, I was thinking like maybe like okay, you go on Spotify, you can't find the demo of such and such. Like maybe someone starts a site where it's just old demos, old releases, this and that. Like, do you think that's ever a possibility, or do you think this is just completely dying?
I think it's a possibility. I think it's, I mean, a lot of the people that have that kind of passion still, most of them are just kind of on SoulSeek. SoulSeek is like very like well guarded, kind of like its own little community and its own
Mm-hmm.
rules. I know I was recently looking, this is going to be date my victory uh nostalgia, but Aiden released an album, their last album they released, which is now like just like doesn't exist anymore because they like self-released it. I was looking for like a better quality because they released it in like 128
Jeez.
kbps, like just like
Oof.
garbage quality, and that's all it was available for because that's what they released it as. But they did like a small pressing of CDs, so I went on SoulSeek to try to get FLAC files to get like a good copy of it. But it's very like protected. Like people like you have to almost hand out a resume uh, to get, these files for certain albums. But a lot of those people that have like the demos and like rare stuff, vintage stuff, the protected stuff, it is very kind of like underneath lock and key on SoulSeek for a lot of these guys. We had a few of them try to come into the Daily Mosh and be like, hey, can I like drop some like rare demos that like no one's gonna really like probably make too much of a fuss about or anything like that, like on the forums, and like if people want it, it'll be there. We had a few people from that, some people from Australia and some other I think some guy from like New York who's like really in like the New York hardcore. So he had like some like really like pristine demos, and well, I wouldn't say pristine, but like stuff that sounded
stuff,
yeah,
right?
stuff that sounded like it was ripped off a cassette deck, like that kind of stuff.
It's probably because the demo was. I mean, I've got a rip of the first VOD demo that was on cassette, like, and it doesn't sound great, but it's listenable.
Yeah. So we had some of those people, but it was like, I would say probably like like in the history of that, like 2008 to now, maybe like 3 or 4 people. So I could see someone, if they have the passion for it and they have the drive for it, you can make things happen. I mean, there's always going to be that possibility if you want to take that risk, but for it to gain traction, I think would be the hardest part. Like have that many people want demos and stuff like that.
One of them 4 people was Rick the Life.
Oh my God. Oh, I actually, one of my friends, who I've known forever, recently told me that his uncle is Rick to Life.
Oh, shit.
And it broke my mind, and I had to update him about Rick to Life. I'm like, you know what your uncle's been saying on like Facebook lately?
He didn't he finally get help? Like he finally got help, and it came out that he was schizophrenic and he's on medication now. Like I hope the dude gets on the mend. Like it doesn't excuse all the bands he ripped off and all that shit, but I hope he gets well. Just put it that way.
Yeah, I guess he had like a medical thing too, where I think he had like some brain damage too, and like drugs and well, I don't know about how many drugs, but I think he was like prescription drugs and things like that he was struggling with. But my mind was completely blown when this guy I've known for like 6 years. He's like, yeah, that's my uncle. And then I had to tell him, like, what he's been posting on Facebook lately? And he's like, no, my uncle's posting that. Oh, I'm gonna have to kick his ass. Like, like he's posting all this like, like Nazi stuff and like things that, 25 to Life had a turbulent relationship with in the New York scene and stuff like that. So very interesting.
I mean, he must have tried to get on my old podcast like 4 times at least, and I was just like,
shit, really?
And I was like, I want to do it so bad, but this was before the Nazi shit, and I'm glad I didn't at this rate, because that would have came out then I'm the Nazi. People just thinking that shit, but like he like when we first started Ill Street, it was like a year and a half later he followed us one day, and I was like, oh, here we fucking go. Messages me, hey, trying to get on, and I just kept ignoring it. And I was like, Adam, we should do this. And he's like, nah, man, it's going to kill us, or it's going to kill our rep. And I'm like, fuck the rep. I'm like, let's get him on, see what he says.
If he gets well, it would be worth talking to, because he's got to have a ton of stories. Right. Yeah. I mean, a ton of stories. And like, you watch that old New York hardcore documentary, the old one, right? Like, I mean, it would be like interviewing somebody from Pit Boss 2000 or One Life Crew or one of those bands where it's like they have a very storied, almost the band's reputation and the stories around the reputation of them greatly exceed what the reality actually was, right? Like the stories of throwing yogurt at Earth Crisis and beating them up at Middlesex County College and wearing a fur coat, right? Like the brawl outside the Coal Chamber show in Asbury Park, right? Like they take on this almost mythic quality when you finally talk to the people, like, yeah, some dude threw punches.
Yeah, I can't get down with the Nazi shit though. That's stupid.
No, it's yeah. Again, I just hope the dude gets well.
I think he is on the uptick. I know the last thing I saw from him, he posted a big apology, kind of saying that he was getting help and that he's not racist, not this and that. But I know he had a dark period there where he was doing like Trump rally songs and like. He was a wild motherfucker. Yeah, he was having a rough time. But yeah, just to kind of like try not to spread too much, misinformation about him. But I think he's doing good now, hopefully, and getting
Uh,
kind of the help he needs in that regard.
Speaking of people who I kind of wonder where they landed, whatever happened to Tony Victory?
Oof.
Like, does anybody know Tony Victory? If you're listening, please come on the show. Like, we would love to ask you what's going on. But like, whatever happened to that dude? He sold the catalog and then he kind of rode off into the sunset. I mean, rightly so, because there are probably bands that if they could find it, they would lynch him. Right? Like all those stories about him telling them to move CDs around and Best Buy and all the shady shit. Like, kind of, it's fucked up, but at the same point, it's how many bands did that label break? Like
Oh,
they had
I
three. Like if you look at it as waves, they had the first wave, the Snapcase, Strife, Bloodlet, Hatebreed, and then Integrity, and then it was the second wave, which was Dead to Fall and Between the Buried and Me and all that sort of stuff. And then they had the third wave with Hawthorne Heights and The Day to Remember and all those crappy kind of light metalcore stuff. And then it kind of just fell apart. I mean, but
I have a I don't mean to cut you off, but I don't want to forget to say this. I have a great story when we're done, and I'll explain some of that stuff for you guys. I'm not going to put anyone's business out there, but I'll tell you guys.
okay. All right. So what else? What else, Tim?
Yeah, dude, I'm seriously happy you came on though, because every time when I seen your email come through, I was like, wait a minute. I was like, let me read this, and it was long, and I was like, do I really want to read all this right now? So the next day when I was at home and I was going through all my emails, I read it, and I was like, I wonder if this dude will come on. And then when you said yeah, I was like, that's fucking amazing, because I always wanted to talk to someone who was in this kind of stuff because it was always super fucking interesting to me, man. I mean, to tell you the truth, like in the heyday of hardcore and like not hardcore, in the heyday of like the late 2000s, I mean, that shit was so prevalent for me. And like, I literally found so many bands from sites like yours that like, I just got to come on and like give you props for that shit, man, because it's super cool that that even existed. Because for people
Mhm.
like me and Jay, it's just like, my life is pretty much music. You know what I mean? So it's like when I find something like that, that is like one of the most exciting things ever. So like seriously, shout out to you guys for putting that work in for people like us to just go on there and get it for free and be like, yeah, I got that record 3 weeks in advance. You just bought it, sucks for you. You know what I mean? It's like people had like the bragging rights back then. I fucking love
Yeah,
that.
it definitely was. It was bragging rights. So you haven't heard that yet? What are you not on the internet?
Yeah, yeah. It's just like so like you guys putting in that work is great, man. And like the one thing I did want to ask, so I was like, how much work did it really entail? Was this like a daily thing? I mean, obviously daily mosh, but like was this like a daily thing where you had to go on and like make sure like shit was running well, or how many people moderated that site at one time?
Ooh, yeah, that's a good question. Man, probably like in its heyday, we probably had maybe like 15 at
Holy
most
shit.
uploaders. And I mean, Ryan ran it for the most part. Matt Reptar got in the door before me. So me and him ran I Like Do Better Dead. And then he was helping with kind of like the administrative work with the Daily Mosh a lot. Um, Especially with like the blogspot stuff and like domains and stuff like that. And then when they switched over to the forums, working a lot on that. Um, but a lot of the people were probably like various uploaders who were like, in different scenes in different parts of the country. Um, and they would be like, oh, hey, have you heard this band? I just put it up on the site. So if you want to check it out, it's up there now. That kind of thing. So I mean, like the workload was pretty like evenly split. I should say probably like when it got later days, when it wasn't as popular and we were seeing like a downtick, it was probably like two or three people. And then even most recently, a person that spun off from Kingdom Leaks tried to do a site called Respawn Music, and they recently got DMCA'd and struck down, but they went back to Blogger. So I was like, hey, I can help you with a theme at least. So I kind of used one of my old themes. I'm like, hey, it's just sitting here in my folders of all these like kind of like old themes I worked on for, the Daily Mosh and stuff like that. But he was doing it by himself. So like every
Wow.
Thursday, because you would be able to get it like a day early now with the leak scenes community. Every Thursday he would like upload, and it would be like an all day thing for him. And
Wow.
a lot of these guys, I never made a cent off of doing anything. they had donation links and stuff like that, but that was mainly for like domain costs, like renewing a domain or server costs or
Yeah,
things of that nature.
hosting, Cloudflare, yeah.
So I never made any money for doing any of this, but there'd be days, Friday or well, back then, what they used to release on, was it Tuesdays? Albums used to release, and then they moved
Yep.
it to Friday. Tuesday, yeah, Tuesday night. It would be like you'd be like on every site imaginable. You know how you're describing like that little bookmark folder, and just
Mhm.
going through and be like, okay, what came out of notable release? What are people going to want to listen to versus like what's something that I liked this week that I can kind of try to put a spotlight on or try to like highlight. But I mean, I think a lot of it was just like passion for music. You know how you guys saying you love
Yeah.
music. This was like kid who grew up in MySpace era, messing with HTML and web formatting and stuff like that. This was like naturally my way, kind of similar to how like people the generation before me had like zines and magazines and they would
Mhm.
put that out. This was like my version of that. I can throw up a Blogger account, throw up some HTML, create some graphics, and like share the music that I'm interested in. And we used to have like, hey, this month we want to know what your favorite album of this month was. And we'll put like your little, like CD stores, how they used to have like staff picks and stuff like that. So we'd ask people for like a monthly album to pick that we could feature on the side so that people could see what, like what tastes we had and things of that nature. So like to me, it was just kind of like a way to kind of like do what we've seen before and just do it in a digital landscape in a way that made sense to us. And then every once in a while, we'd get stuff early and we would get a huge swell of people coming through the door. And then we would let's just try to like, keep the momentum going and to the point where it is now, like we've kind of like all been saying, where, convenience kind of wins out. It's a lot easier to just go on Spotify and listen to an album versus maintaining a music library. I mean, I still
Mhm.
do it out of habit, but I'm probably a little crazy for that. So
Yeah. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Well, and now that you bring up like the cost, the server costs and stuff, like what does that entail? Like, how much is it? Do they charge by how many terabytes that are uploaded into the cloud, or how does that work?
yeah, so I mean, most of the sites were hosted on like the third party services, which kind
Okay.
of gave them some, you know, legal shadiness to it, for lack of a better word.
I know what you
But
mean. Yeah.
we wouldn't have to host the files, which is the majority of it. The main thing they hit you with is like traffic that you get or bandwidth.
Mm.
And you'd usually probably have to pay for like a dedicated server. So they'd have like a server just for you versus, a shared server, which I mean, all of them probably started out with shared servers. Um, Thankfully, with a lot of the ways we did it, we didn't have to worry about that because we were using Blogger, which is Google hosted. And then like, like Pro Boards or something like that, the forums, which are then also, hosted by them. So we didn't have to worry about that. But the bigger sites, they were like, uh, traffic was probably what they were getting nailed on the most, or
Mm.
transferring servers. Um,
Uh,
that was one thing that commonly happened, especially if like a hosting site was kind of like, yeah, we're kind of getting some pushback from your website. Um, they would kind of like have to jump to a different server in a different area or a different hosting provider just because of complaints and stuff like that from what I've heard.
because I know back in the day, like you could buy like a Google, I forget what it was called, but it would pay you for every time someone clicked on your link, like say like 0.5 cents or some shit. I just forget what it was called, but I always wondered if that's how these sites ran, where like they would pay like a fee up front, and then all the people that came via, you know, a Google search or something, they would get some money, and then that's how they paid their server fees and all that stuff. So I always wondered how that worked.
Yeah, there was Google Ads for a while.
That's what it was. Yep.
And that's changed dramatically now. Like Google Ads now versus back then was different. You'd have like a code you'd put on your website and it would serve up like a random ad to people. So like
Okay.
you'd typically have that like in your header. So when they hit the page, they load that ad. And then they used various websites. AdFly was, I think, the one that I remember the most. So what people would do then is you'd have your link to download be an AdFly link, which would then hit you with the ad and then redirect you to the download.
Gotcha.
Mm.
Okay. That's actually pretty smart.
And then you would make some ad revenue off of that. I never ran any of that, but I know that we had some of the people that did run it thought that it was a good idea, and I was always like, nah, I want to make zero money off this. No money. Like,
Yeah, because if a label comes back and
then
sees,
that's
you're
you
fucked.
become liable and it creates problems,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
Yeah, then you're in court and it's like, was this $3,000 really worth this problem right now?
Right. Oh, good. They paid hosting for 9 months, and here I am paying a Lars Ulrich Napster sized fine. It's like, really? Really?
Yeah, right. Yeah, there's no Metallica on the Daily Mosh.
just
Oh,
Saint
there
Anger.
might have been. Oh yeah.
just say that. Awesome. All right. Well, Nikki, honestly, want to thank you for your time, man. Thanks for coming on, brother. This has been really great. It's hopefully our audience enjoys this site, the peering behind the curtain, right, into how this stuff actually worked. A lot of us have used it and or perused it, so it's really cool to talk to somebody who was actually there. So on behalf of Tim, myself, I want to thank Nikki for coming on. On behalf of Nikki, Tim, and myself, I want to thank all of you for watching and listening once again. New Breed _ podcast on Twitter and Instagram, newbreedpodcast@gmail.com, 267-297-4627 for all your complaints, comments, concerns, and foul-mouthed messages. Please leave them. We will play them on the air. Find us on r/new metal. Find us in our Facebook group. So until next week, Jay and Tim saying,
Later.
cheers.